The topic. On my extreme right, Devpriya Bhattacharya, member, CPT Board of Trustees, and distinguished fellows at Center for Policy Dialogue. Niamazam is there from founder and CEO of Samo, MediaTek, Professor Mahendra Lama, senior professor at Jawaharlal Nehru University, also an advisory board member of the Himalayan Future Forum, and Pushpa Sharma, who is representing our partners, National University of Singapore, Institute of South Asia Studies. So over these 50 minutes, what we are going to do in the morning, Cecil set the stage, and then we had Ambassador Tariq Karim talk about climate, one of the C's of the Himalayan Future Forum. We are talking about climate, connectivity, and community. Tomorrow we have a lot of sessions coming on communities. And here today we are going to talk about connectivity. And when we talk about connectivity, as I was mentioning in my opening remarks, it's a very broad concept in terms of we can talk about physical connectivity, we can talk about multimodal connectivity. But for me personally, as a Himalayan citizen, it's more about the people-to-people connectivity, which at times get very much ignored. And I always believe that at a personal level and also at an institutional level, that if we are going to have the more other types of connectivity in the future, the foundations have to be on people-to-people connectivity. So we are also the 4 countries are also represented. So interestingly, we have the BBIN today very much represented here. So in this 50 minutes, we will have a round where the speakers are going to introduce themselves in terms of where do they come from, in terms of the whole relationship with this topic. And we will have maybe 2 to 3 rounds of discussion. Then we can ask for some interventions on the floor, and we would end at 11:50. So with that, maybe I'll start with Devpriya in terms of your own work and how do you connect with connectivity.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'll be failing in my duty if I don't thank you and your team for the kind invitation, the efficient management, and the warm hospitality. Thank you. And it's a unique opportunity to meet the friends. We are still on the post-COVID circumstances, recovering, reinstating our relationships in many ways. So, Excellencies, friends, and colleagues, we had a great opening in the morning, and I will start to try to build on what we have heard in the morning. And since I come from a think tank, my job is to problematize issues. That's what I'm going to do. So the first issue is that there is no dearth of organization which are working on the areas of regional cooperation in South Asia in one form or other, directly or indirectly. So any new kid in the block will have to define itself. How does it really distinguishes itself from the rest, and how it can be more effective and would be addressing what niche area it is going to do. So how do you frame the Himalayan Forum in that sense? How do you frame it? So the 3 concepts which has been put on the table are of different levels of understanding. And we are picking up connectivity over here. So if the 3 are there, and if I take what Ambassador Tariq Karim has said, the anchor of these 3 C's is your climate. Okay? So then the means of achieving them is connectivity. And the outcome will be measured in terms of welfare of the community, if I can frame it in that particular dimensions. Obviously, 3 C's will not be enough. We would need more C's over there. 1 C is obviously we will have to build a consensus. The consensus word was uttered earlier. I think similarly, we will need more communication in order to reach out, which is beyond connectivity. And the third is that I think we'll need a bit more compassion. Because at the end of the day, if we do not have the value-based approach over here, and particularly for those people who have been left behind, and in the Himalayan region and the greater subcontinent, we know that whilst the poverty is going down, the inequality is increasing, and there are traditional left-behind people who still creates a huge pockets of poverty in many ways, and they are the ones who are affected most in that way. So what I will urge upon the colleagues over here to frame the issues in such a way so that we know these things, what we are trying to do, and in a different way. 2 points. I won't go beyond 3 points. My grandmother told me, don't make more than 3 points. They will never remember the fourth one, even if they come from the Himalaya. So what are the other 2 points? I think I found the opening remarks, as they should be, very grand and very broad canvas. They are important people. But if you allow me, I'm saying this word in a very right way. They're very innocent. Because there are more other challenges which are around over here. We are in a region where we live supposedly for connectivity, but we do have picket fences. So within those picket fences, what exactly are the issues which are there? At the end of the day, the nation states are maximizing their approaches, which undermining the regional equilibrium in many ways. So that is the reality. So 2 issues you will see both in the regional intergovernmental process. The geostrategic concerns have risen like anything and is really redefining the possibility of connectivity in many ways. If you give me other occasion, I will give examples of that. So the geostrategic concerns, I found that totally absent in our opening challenges, because this is one. The other one is that organizations like ours, which operates on a non-governmental, non-profit basis with compassion and cooperation, they're facing a squeezing space, policy space within their respective country. And we expect them to play more role, as was said in the morning, that when you have a disparate, disintegrated, or disjointed regional cooperation approach, the non-state actors are supposed to fill in the gaps, but their space is decreasing. So those were my 3 points over here. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Depriya. That's a good way to set the stage. Now I'll go to Professor Mahendra Lama, and coming from India, which is the eye is in the middle of this whole connectivity discourse, because I think Bangladesh, Bhutan, or Nepal can't do much without connecting via India. So where do you see, and you've been working a lot around regional connectivity work, so maybe you can just set the stage of your work and how you connect to the Himalayan connectivity. I know it's a long question, but a quick 3 to 4 minute perspective.
Well, thank you very much. We are trying to redefine the model of development in the mountain areas, as we think that the development models, the orthodox models, which we have followed so far, have not been able to really deliver goods in the Himalayas across the countries. We are also trying to say that Himalayas always remained as a part of the periphery discourse. We are never mainstreamized as a kind of discourse at any national points or international platforms. So what we are saying is, our discourse has been, to a large extent, security-centric. So orthodox military issues, the hard power came into being. Whereas Himalayas are famous for the soft powers, the music to creativity, to language, to literature, to anything like this. So we would like to really bring back the strengths of the Himalayas in a forum like this. The third factor which we are trying to really do in this forum is, we don't want to consider borders as national security threats, because we have realized over the years this will take us nowhere. So why not borders as opportunities, right? And the moment you rethink about borders and borderlands, and that is all South Asia all about, right? We start thinking about a new process of development where you have opportunities for across the borders. We started well. If you see what really happened on the connectivity projects, started with pilgrims, then explorers, then you have traders, then you have botanists, then you have strategic invaders, right? You can name anything. Pilgrims, right? You can Srongsang Gyampo to Guru Padma Sambhava to anyone. even Brikuti, right? Then you have traders, you have botanists, starting with Hookers to Hudson to Eden to explorers, Alexander D. Corus to J.C. Bose to, right? And Nain Singh Raut in the Western Himalayas. And of course, you have military invaders, including Young Husband. So you started well, did this. You opened Nathula trade route, did extensive trade. You opened Jalapla trade route. You did Shipkila, all kinds of things. You did fairly well. But suddenly we disintegrated. We were such an integrated, compact whole. This morning, the World Bank director on integration, she was right when she said that this place, this geography was so integrated. It disintegrated. It disintegrated in such a manner that all our connectivity projects were absolutely displaced and dislocated. From Calcutta to go to Tripura, right? It used to be just 350 kilometers. And it disintegrated. And today, if you want to go from Calcutta to Tripura, it is 1,645 kilometers. This is true everywhere. So therefore, I say that what we are trying to do in Himalayan Forum, in World Bank, in ADB, and in number of forums where we participate is to really reintegrate. And the process of reintegration is much more complex, much more painful also, and to a large extent, much more difficult also. Therefore, we are doing this. But we have seen in the last 20 years, 15 years, absolutely brilliant changes in this region, right? You have old connectivities, they are being restored. New roles given to a country like Bhutan and Nepal and Bangladesh. Everyone used to think that India is the only transit point in whole of South Asia. Today, Bhutan is equally as important a transit point. Bangladesh as important a transit point. So you have a Fulbari corridor, you have a Gelefu, Kokrajhar railway line, so you have a railway line between Tripura and Bangladesh. So you have quite a few things happening that side. And it is 4x4 matrix. This is where I would like to end my interventions. 4x4, look at northeast part of India. Northeast was absolutely a no-go geography. Today, everyone is there in the Northeast. Look at World Bank, Asian Development Bank, EU, UN, even bilateral institutions like JICA, right? You have all the institutions there. Our Prime Minister says that every minister has to go to the Northeast every fortnight. Our Prime Minister has visited Northeast more than 58 times. It never used to happen. So it's a 4x4 matrix. First, develop connectivities within a state, say Assam. Second, between Assam and Tripura, or Assam and Meghalaya. Third, between the region and the rest of India, right? And the fourth is region and the neighboring countries, because 98% of the Northeast region's border is with the neighboring countries. But despite such a huge border, our trade with the neighboring countries as compared to India's total trade is not even 1%. So it defeats the entire logic of, contiguity with the neighboring countries. And the 4 matrices which is widely used is you do extensive railway projects, the road projects, the air projects, right? The waterways, and it's all happening. Because we see what has happened on the other side of the borders. Look at Myanmar and China, look at Myanmar and Thailand, right? It's the same borderlands. And the trade between Myanmar and China through Muse-Ruili border would be almost 4 to 5 billion. With Thailand, between Myanmar and Thailand, would again be another $4-5 billion. Where our trade with Myanmar, India's total trade with Myanmar would be not more than $2.5 billion. How do you explain this? Right? So there are quite a few pressure points building. right? Quite a few conversion, both the centripetal and the centrifugal forces are coming together and forcing these state-level actors, the local actors and the national actors, and of course the actors on the other side of the border, to rethink about connectivity, because that is the only way forward, to bring what you call it an integration process into a kind of hardcore reality. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. That's so you moved on picking up the connectivity discourse to some real examples that are happening and some of the comparatives, and we see the trade comparatives not only in Asia, but some of the work we do in Africa. We've seen how that integration has taken place, especially among East East African community. And there's, again, the connectivity discourse keeps changing, and despite the politics, we also see connectivity moving. So let's shift gears a bit, and I bring in Nyamazam into the discourse, because when we are talking about connectivity, we are also talking about digital connectivity. And now that's something that has, especially the past 15, 20 years, that's been a big issue in terms of how digital connectivity is also proliferating. A lot of good things, also some of the challenges. So maybe you want to talk about what you are doing out of Bhutan, and then how do you see the digital connectivity part of it as an opening?
Thank you. Thank you, Sujeev. A kuzampo to all of you here. One thing I've realized actually with digital connectivity is that while we just had discussions regarding borders and a lot of issues around connectivity, digital connectivity allows us to move beyond borders, just at a click of a button. And that's something that we do at my work at SAMU. I work at the intersection of art and technology. And I personally feel that in the Himalayan region, one of the biggest things that connects us all is stories. Growing up, I have listened to stories by my grandmother, and one of my favorite ones used to be about how Bodha was built. And I came to Bodha and stayed a month with my grandmother. So the story about Bodha was about, that version that my grandmother told me was about this woman, who sold eggs. I don't know how far it was true, but sold eggs and then built Bodha. So I was fascinated as a kid about this story, and I really wanted to see Bodha. Similarly, we have grown up listening to so many stories from the Himalayan region. And things like, for example, the stories about Yetis. Today we're talking about stories like issues like climate change, a story that connects us all again. And we feel that stories is something that we can really touch people in the Himalayas with. We have that ability. Even when we're talking about issues like climate change or any other issues that matters to the Himalayas, we have seen that the impact can be better and probably more shared well if we have documented it in some form of stories. Forums like this, I feel, are very important, but I also feel that forums like this can actually give us ideas about what kind of stories we need to create in order to bring or highlight issues that the Himalayas are confronted with. We have a lot of challenges in the Himalayas, and the challenges are not just for Bhutan or Nepal or for Bangladesh or, for the matter, for Sikkim. It's across, and I feel in the heart of the challenges is also the future of the Himalayas, the young people of the Himalayan region, who form quite a huge amount, a significant amount of the population. And what matters to them today? They probably, very few of them are following forums like this, right? Very few of them are attending conferences or even reading up about climate change or any kind of issues that impacts us or impacts the Himalayas. But what I do know, and what all of us know here, are that they consume a lot of content online. They are watching films. They are on TikTok. They are on the social media. They're consuming a lot of content. And our work in that space gives us the chance to work with young people who can shape the future of the Himalayas. And at Bhutan, when we started out, we had the challenges that most of the Himalayan countries have. We have internet, access to internet, which gives us access to the whole wide world of internet and content from around the world. But we do not have enough content, local content. And not many young people are watching local content because they have access to global content. So because of that, we are losing our culture, we're losing our values. And at the same time, our languages are also at threat. So in that space, with digital technology, we were able to bring together filmmakers, connect young content creators on a single platform, and then give a chance for local content to have a space. And that has helped us to actually involve young people in content creation, create stories that matter to us, and at the same time, also create a huge amount of jobs in the creative space. And one thing, we have also seen that young people are very interested in stories and in the digital space, and combining this two gives us access to people around the world, not just in the Himalayan region. Now, I've been sharing with Sujeev here that we have been in business for the last 2.5 years, and through the insights that we have gained and through the learnings that we have had as the first OTT platform in Bhutan, producing a whole lot of original content in partnership with professionals in the creative industry, what we have learned is that if we can do this in Bhutan, we can definitely do this in the Himalayan region. And the Himalayas, or the stories are similar to us. We can, through the digital connection, through digital connectivity, it's now possible for us that we have a Nepali film that we watch in Bhutan, probably even with English subtitles, even with Dzongkha subtitles, or even dubbed in Dzongkha. And likewise, a Bhutanese film can be made available for Himalayan audiences in languages that they're familiar with. And together, the market size is around 86 million. That's a huge market size for digital platforms. And that's where we are now interested to work on. And we feel that through this digital transformation and through digital connectivity, we can create over 5,000 jobs in the Himalayas. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nima. I think, that's the magic word number we keep using is the 86 million as the Himalayan population. So when you're looking at it, we are looking at the connectivity of these 86 million, and especially now through digital. And what you have been able to experiment in Nepal, in Bhutan, is definitely scalable and something that that's one of the things that, as we've been starting the discussion from last June, in terms of how you can build these platforms to build in content, stories, because Himalayas is about oral history. It is about connecting through stories. Because whenever we are traveling, be it on food, be it on culture, that's where the initial connection begins. And if you can strengthen that, and tomorrow there are sessions on indigenous knowledge, there's sessions on art, literature, culture that is going to take up more. But I think when we are talking about connectivity, as Professor Mahendra Rama was saying, a lot of the lenses we use is on security, we use on borders, but connectivity can go beyond. So I'll come to Pushpa to now sitting in, as we were discussing last month, sharing an office space next to each other at the university, and we were discussing about this, how sitting in Singapore, we see the connectivity between South Asia and Southeast Asia. And also the dimensions of connectivity keep changing in our head. And you've been also very much involved with an South Asian Institute, starting up with SORTI, working with SORTI. So where do you see, what are your views on the connectivity? Yes.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. And yes, I'm from Nepal, but here I'm representing NUS ISAS. I have to also make this small clarification, otherwise I'm going to get a good question from my director back in office. And on behalf of NUS ISAS, which is a partner of this forum, I would like to welcome you all. NUS ISAS is celebrating its 20th year this year. There are 5 clusters that ISS works with. Of those 5 clusters, I think in one way or the other, all the 5 clusters do relate to what we are talking about in this forum, the 3 Cs. And as Dr. Dev also said, perhaps as we might expand it further. But the 2 clusters, one on trade and economics and the other on sustainability and environment, are very closely related to the topics that we are discussing over here. And as you rightly said, before I moved to ISS, I did work on issues of South Asia for nearly 2 decades now, based in Kathmandu. And of course, there is no dearth of organizations and who are working on issues of South Asian cooperation, South Asian connectivity, issues of connectivity. And the 3 topics that have been chosen from this forum have also been not new, actually, right? These have been taken up by different organizations in different ways. There have been work on connectivity, there have been work on climate change, there have been work going on about communities. But Dr. Dev very rightly said, how do we frame these 3 together in this forum would be a new way to go forward. And at NUS ISS, perhaps looking at these 3 issues from a Himalayan perspective might be a new work that NUSIS might be interested to go forward. Of course, we'll have that discussion as we go along. But one interesting thing about being in Singapore is sometimes when you are away from a region, perhaps the way that you look at the work that's going on here might be different. I'm yet to experience that because I moved there very recently. And I might be able to share my experience on that, how it looks like from beyond the region would be something perhaps I might share with you all later on. But as I said, connectivity is not something new, and then we have been talking about this for a very, very long time. Now the idea is how do we push this forward? And Ambassador Karim rightly said, climate change perhaps is the anchor. When we talk about Himalayan future, climate change will be the anchor, implicitly, explicitly, and that is where perhaps we have to focus on. And that relates very well to the idea of connectivity as well. I'll just only point to one and then stop my intervention in the first round over here. Let's talk about physical connectivity. When we're talking about physical connectivity and we're talking about the Himalayas, the mountains, what we are seeing is that we have to build up these connectivity networks, the physical connectivity networks, in order to connect the mountain areas which are already very fragile. So from an environmental perspective, from a climate change perspective, how do we go about that? It is necessary that we have to build that, but at the same time, we also have to be very careful that we are not destroying the ecology, the environment, and also adding more to climate change with this fossil fuel-based kind of development that have been taking place and which perhaps will go on for a very long time to come. So these are perhaps some of the issues that we have to think about if we are to make this forum a new kind of a forum where we can discuss these issues of the Himalayan problems, and then perhaps we'll be able to take it forward in a better way if we can think about it from that perspective. So I'll just stop here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pushpa. So I'll go back now, and then I'm also looking at the watch, so clock, and it's so interesting, it passes so fast. So what we can do is that spend the next round maybe taking, I want to give some interventions from the floor also, 2 or 3 action points that we can think of on connectivity, that we can think of and what the forum can look at. So maybe I'll start with Devpriya.
Thank you. Let me take my logic a bit further, listening to my colleagues over here. You see, whether it is connectivity or community or for that matter climate, we may have many encouraging individual or enterprise level stories, just Zam has given us. But the scope of those will be pretty limited. The opportunity to scale them up will be pretty limited if we do not put them in a policy framework. So at the end of the day, it is all about creating the enabling policy environment, having the right institutions to do that job. So that is what it is. So for this forum, we'll have to make a choice. May not be a choice, this is a false dichotomy. That whether one concentrates at a granular level, promoting storytelling and energizing the environment, or it seeks to influence the policy framework, which is at this moment deterring us from realizing the full potential of the collaborative opportunities in that way. That is one point in that way. I think that has to be really sorted out because one can do everything, but there is a limit to which one can do everything. So what about scaling up and scoping up and policy framework? The other point is that I mentioned that at the end of the day, geostrategic concerns have become predominant in the region as in the rest of the world. We are really living in the post-COVID, post-Ukraine, post-Gaza world in that way. And now we will say post-Houthi world and everything else in that way. And in Bangladesh, we live in the post-Rohingya world. So the issue is that how do you really manage the two big neighbors vis-a-vis the rest of the subcontinent? And how really these relationships will be built into or embedded in a collective endeavor where the common goods will be pursued in that way. That we really don't see as of today. So that is a major challenge for balancing act for all the countries in their political economic behavior as it goes. You asked for the action points and others. So, and my good friend Mahendra was quite upbeat today morning. I like that. But he really didn't say exactly where it is going in that way. So take, for example, Northeast, he mentioned. So I'm picking on Northeast since he mentioned Northeast. So access to Northeast is very important. Similarly, access to the Himalayan countries like Bhutan and Nepal is very important. And two of these countries being landlocked, and these also landlocked in certain ways, they need access to seaports. And Bangladesh is a country which can offer that seaport to the access to the broader Himalayan region in that way. And look at what is happening. So we, on behalf of Bangladesh, and given our big neighbor, all the multimodal access through the countries, through our countries, including we did a coastal transit or a coastal shipping transport agreement as well. But to reach Nepal, the 26 kilometers out there, we are still struggling. How do you explain that? Won't you say that we have been pretty innocent by ignoring those things? That is the reality which we are dealing with, that we are not being able to cross that part to come to Nepal, to bring all those things from Mongla port and to others. And now we are building Matarbari with the Japanese help, with immense possibility of servicing the whole Himalayan region. Or you take the connectivity when you talk about, it is not about only multimodal transport system connectivity, it's also energy connectivity. So look at Nepal. We are trying to import power from Nepal. Again, transmission line through a third country is a problem. We want to get access, and not only access, import from Bhutan their power, but also invest over there. We are not being able to. So look at those barriers. You know, this is what I'm talking about. Look at the barriers where it is there, and how do you really overcome them? What really happens is that our experience shows that you can pick a champion over there and whisper in his or her ear a technical solution and hope that this chap is going to run and solve the problem of the world. That doesn't happen. You in a frugal democracy, in a dysfunctional bureaucratic system, what you need is the voice of the citizens, the stakeholders' voice. So I only hope and pray that your Himalayan Forum will become a real platform for the citizens, the entrepreneurs, the private sector, the non-state actors, the social movements, in order to voice their discontent, their dissent about those barriers that are not allowing them to achieve a fuller life in this region. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Deopriya. I mean, very apt, and I think, as we were discussing yesterday, I'm a great fan of Google Maps. And then in Google Map, you can see from 30,000 feet view, you can see street views. So when we are looking at policy, and what we are talking about, we need to really get into this 30,000 feet view to get the policy environment straight, but also look at some of the granular people-to-people work that's already happening, like what Zam is doing in Bhutan. So a lot of, tomorrow we are having a very interesting session on indigenous products and knowledge. And so I think it's about a combination of this. And as you rightly pointed out, and when we were looking at the Himalayan Future Forum, there are multiple platforms, as Cecil also mentioned in the morning, but how do we bring everybody together? And that's the key. I think that's where it is necessary, and especially given the geopolitics, that we know that there's going to be a big challenge as we go ahead when we look at from a geopolitical perspective. Professor Mahendra Lama, your perspective on 2-3 points we can look at.
Well, thank you very much. Things are happening. Because we have been watching situation for last 30 years in South Asia, very keenly observing what is happening, writing in very prolific manner, interacting with institutions, actors. Things are happening, let me assure you that, right? What we are trying to do is to do away with orthodox model again. When we started regionalism process in South Asia, we thought that we will bring lock, stock, and barrel a model from Europe, a model from North America, about doing the regional cooperation process in there, where we thought that trade is going to be the key issue, right? So we start with preferential trading arrangement, then we go to free trade area, then we go to customs union, common market, then economic union. That has not worked out. So what we are trying to say today is, you talk about new regionalism process, which is actually started from the bottom. Communities comes first, non-state actors, private sectors, because all the regional economic cooperation process have been triggered by the government, for the government, and they have been of the government. So we would like to reverse the process today. And that is why we are talking about reverse integration today. Right? Why not? Why do you call mountain areas as periphery, and a city like what you call Delhi or Dhaka or something like as center? Why not you consider them as the center and we are the periphery? We reverse the process. As a result of which has happened is, in the last 3 decades or so, we have been watching that all our major efforts in the mountain areas have been marginalized, say on climate change. Our farmers have adapted to climate change without knowing that this is a impact of climate change. The radish which the Sikkimese farmers used to grow in the north and keep them under the earth for 4 months, 5 months, from October to March to eat sometimes in April, they said, no, we don't do that because we did that for 200 years. Now we don't do that, precisely because we are now able to grow radish in December also, in January also, though they have adapted well. So what we are trying to do, possibly Himalayan Forum should do, is to really globalize this local knowledge. The localization of globals has been always a one-way process. Everywhere you go, right? So what our idea should be to globalize the locals, what we do. Secondly, I would say, look, being a teacher in JNU, interacting with all kinds of institutions, actors, we have suddenly realized that if your points are well made, it could be 20 years back, 30 years back, someone will take it forward. Nathula trade between Sikkim and closed in 1962. Nobody thought that it could be reopened. We did it. What my very dear friend Devapriya referred to, cross-border electricity trade. 3-5 institutions from South Asia, we came together, studied cross-border electricity trade in such an expansive manner for almost 10 years. Binod Karmacharya, I see here, right? Ask ADB, the US aid, the World Bank, All of us came together and did this. Today, you'll be surprised. Government of India has done the cross-border electricity trade guidelines. So for the first time, Government of India says, I'm going to be the transit. We could not think about it 20 years back. We really could not think about it because that time, whenever we used to go and tell these senior bureaucrats, why not we do this? He says, hey, don't touch that. Today, Government of India says, no, please go ahead. We are going to be the transit providers, right? Nobody thought that Bhutan would be our transit providers to Arunachal Pradesh and Assam, right? Nobody thought that Nepal would be our transit providers to Nepal, to India from Chihuahuanjang, the entire eastern. So things are fast changing. So what I would suggest, my second point which needs to be brought to the forum for action is getting all these possibilities together and say these are the weak forms. The third point I would like to say is, we have lost many things. One of the critical areas of actions we have lost is our traditional medicinal systems. What we have lost also is the designs and fashions. The entire geography mountain areas. No country in the world, no region in the world would provide so much of diversity as far as designs and fashions is concerned. Go to Sikkim, go to Nagaland, go to Bangladesh, stay here in Nepal. TMS, my great-grandfather, used to be a very avid practitioner of traditional medicinal systems. And when I went to college and the university, then suddenly I realized that there's something like IPR, right? If we were able to patent some of the knowledges of my great-grandfather, he would have been another Coca-Cola company. Right?
Okay.
We have lost. So therefore, I would say that these things have to be brought because these are our soft powers. These are our strengths. And nobody would do anything about it except the people in the mountain areas, the people in this geography, what we call Eastern South Asia. Thank you.
Thank you. So a lot of things, and I think connectivity through soft power is one of them, and which comes to, again, back to the digital and the soft power world. So you want to just provide your final perspective on.
I do feel that forums like this can definitely bring people together, especially, people who are in the creative and the art industry to discuss,
Please. Yeah.
to discuss, the possibilities of working together and also how, like, for example, right now, we take a lot of pride as filmmakers that if our film makes it to a global, international film festival or an award ceremony, but, we do not have something similar of that degree, of that recognition in our own Himalayan region. I think it's time to build that so that, we also appreciate what we have to offer, not just to the Himalayan citizens, but also to the global space. And the other thing is, definitely I agree that for anything like a collaboration in the art and the creative industry for the Himalayan region to work, policy is very important. And I feel that Himalayan Future Forum could be one platform to make policymakers also think, bring together, film boards from Nepal, film boards from Sikkim, Bhutan, and other Himalayan nations together to think about how can we work truly together in collaboration and leverage digital connectivity, connectivity through our stories, and then create opportunities for our Himalayan citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Pushpa, your final remarks.
Thank you. I know the time is running out. I won't take very long.
Yes.
I do, listening to the previous speakers, there are challenges, as Dr. Deb already pointed out, and we all know geopolitics is the biggest factor. Without that in place, perhaps moving towards a stronger connectivity becomes very difficult. How do you crack that is a big question, right? At the same time, things have progressed a bit. If we compare to what it was earlier, as Professor Lama said, say, for example, on energy trade, there have been some developments which are encouraging. But they are not complete yet. Dr. Deb pointed out, the problems in terms of connecting Nepal with Bangladesh. But even in terms of the electricity trade that Nepal, the agreement that Nepal has had with India recently, and the guideline that Professor Lama said, there are some constraints in the guidelines which perhaps puts a big question in terms of whether this electricity trade between the two countries will become implementable in the long run. There is a big euphoria now that the agreement has been signed, which is a good way forward. But whether that can be implemented is a big question. How do you crack that is again a big question. I don't have an answer to that. And that's what perhaps we have to keep on discussing. And then we have to keep this momentum going. But, and then the final point that I would want to make is, again, as we're talking of hydroelectricity on energy trade, and that I would want to just focus on that. Very important from the perspective of climate change as well, right? Because when you talk about renewable energy and cooperation in renewable energy among the neighboring countries, would be one way of contributing towards climate, something that we are taking a step towards climate action. But in a Himalayan fragile country like Nepal, again, there are questions about how do you go on building hydroelectricity without damaging the environment. And also, in the face of climate change itself, if you look at in the reverse order, what will happen to Nepal's hydroelectricity in the coming years when we are looking at these extreme weather events like floods? We saw in Sikkim what happened. Same thing might happen right in Nepal as well. What happens if our rivers dry up and then we don't have enough water with the glacier melting in the mountains? So there are lots of questions that I would want to put forth for the forum actually as we discuss these different issues as we take forward. Perhaps there are many challenges, but as Professor Lama rightly said, it's not that because there are challenges and we keep silent. We need to keep the momentum alive and with the optimism that perhaps there will be a day when things become a bit easier where, these things can move through and then we can have a better situation than what we are seeing today. I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I think, unfortunately, I don't think we'll have time to get interventions from the floor. But what is coming out very clearly, I think what we delved upon was multiple facets of connectivity from we talked about trade, we talked about soft power, we talked about energy, and I think one of the things that, and especially when it comes to geopolitics, I think as in Nepal, when we are doing if we move a bit into Nepal, we talk about Nepal, I always say is that we need to take political uncertainty as the constant. Because you have to do things, assuming there is going to be political uncertainty. So similarly, as we are working ahead on the connectivity discourse, I think the key is to assume that there are going to be geopolitical stress that's going to continuously take place. But also having recognized the changes that have taken place, I think as what Professor Lama was saying and Pusho was also saying, is that there has been tremendous transformations in the past 15, 20 years. And I think one of the things that we also need to recognize is that how digitization, tomorrow we'll be discussing more about it, and how technology has also built connect. Today you can be sitting somewhere and watching a YouTube video of another place, appreciating art, culture, literature, learning about food. So there's a lot of, and also the sharing of knowledge. I think we will moving on to the speaker from a publishing house, and I think the sharing of knowledge, like when we look at the amount of knowledge that is being shared, the connectivity through knowledge. So I think it's also to pick up what are the things that are working, and I think there are multiple things that are not working. But to also see that what are things that are working and how can we make them work better, more efficiently. And I think, again, going back to using platforms like this to share knowledge, to bring in different ideas. And each of these items are, when we discuss connectivity now, these are very vast. We are talking about multiple things. We are talking about multiple dimensions. But how do we all have a certain intent to do something good in terms of for the region. And I think that is what I think was going to drive this connectivity discourse. And that is what is driven, as sort of Professor Mahendra Lama was saying. Somebody discusses it 20 years ago, and there's that window of opportunity, and it happens. And I think we have to continuously look for those windows of opportunity for better Himalayan connectivity. With that, we stop here. Thank you very much. A round of applause to the panelists.